Recording now. So once again, thanks everyone for your time and joining this session. So what I'm going to do today, and most of you people, I think, who joined, I'm assuming that you are from some kind of Oracle applications background, either e-business suite, etc., or you have been already working in the Fusion applications, either functional or some kind of technical. So keeping that in mind, if you're not from Oracle apps background or not from this apps background, if you're from Java or something else, we are still good. Okay, I'm telling most of the guys what I see is nowadays learning this technology from Oracle apps background because they want to migrate towards Fusion applications, and this is one of the primary technologies one has to know if you want to really work in the Fusion technical side. But in the Fusion technical side, we don't get the direct access to the database backend, etc. You cannot get access to PLSQL and all that stuff. So anything what you're talking real pure technical work in Fusion applications will be the integrations, which is like the critical part of integrating with other applications, etc. So that's the assumption I'm making here. So what I'm going to do in today's session, I'm first going to start about some background about the technologies like web technologies and web services, because this is very important to know about these technologies. I'll tell you why when I just come to that one. So in that, I'll talk about what is MVC architecture, what kind of communication, the browser and the server, how they're able to communicate, and what is the importance of these URLs and what is a web service. I will try to connect these web technologies with the web service. And then we'll also go and see the layman terms, what is the difference between SOAP and REST web services. After that, I'm going to show one integration. I'll log into the the integration cloud platform, and I'll be creating one integrations, which is very, very small integration without much business logic, but that is going to help us to understand the different steps involved to create the integration. And after that, I'm also going to show a couple of more use cases in the integration. So here, I'm not going to build the integration from scratch, but I'll be opening an existing integration which is already there, which I created recently. I'm going to talk about run that and show what kind of integrations we'll be able to develop by end of this course or at some point. That's what will give you some idea. And then we also talk about how this course is organized. So I have actually come up this curriculum after a lot of thinking and based on my experience, etc. So I'll talk about how exactly I'm organizing this course so that it is very easy to learn and from very basics, and then you will also go to advanced level of integrations with different tools and technologies. So I'm going to talk about that. Okay, so to start with this one, so what happens in the Fusion applications? There's the major difference. There's a big difference between how the Oracle applications used to work and how the Fusion applications work. So in case of Oracle applications, it's always the database technologies, correct? So as a technical person in Oracle application side, you'll be working with the database technologies. But when it comes to Fusion applications, you hardly work with database technologies. You don't have direct access to the Fusion application background and the backend database, etc. Anything technical here, either it is going to be some kind of reporting, or it could be like for data loading stuff. Again, these are not really complex technical activities. The most complex technical activity will be working with the web services and develop the integrations. So you don't get access to the PLSQL APIs. It means if you want to do any inbound and outbound integrations, either you want to pull some data from Fusion applications or you want to push some data into Fusion applications, you have to use the web services which are exposed in the Fusion applications. The web services you are not writing usually. The web services, what we're talking here, the Fusion applications development team, Oracle product development team, they have already exposed some services. So those services will be able to invoke, and do the integration of the Fusion applications. So the very basic level, That's what you are doing at the integrations. We're working with the web services which are part of the Fusion applications, right? So to understand that web services concepts, to understand the integrations, we should be also understanding a little bit background about these technologies, how they're connected with the technologies like web technologies, etc. So that's what I want to start with. So when it comes to web technologies, why it is web technologies? Because the Fusion applications is actually a web application. It is not no more just a database application. It's a web-based enterprise application which is developed with the help of Fusion middleware. It is using Fusion middleware as a technology stack behind the scene. And the Fusion middleware comprises of like Oracle ADF, Oracle SOVA, OBI, OIM, etc. And in the recent past, Oracle has added more things to that one to make like the leverage the power of cloud. Like instead of ADF, we're having VBCS. Instead of SOVA, we're having integration cloud. Instead of OBI, we're having Oracle Analytics Cloud, etc. So for all this, the behind the scene, it is a web technology which is like helping us. So what is a web technology? Web technology is nothing but with the web technology, you are going to develop web applications. What is web applications? Your UI will be always a browser-based UI, correct? In the web application, if you want to use the application functionality, how will you use the application? You go to some browser and use one URL. That URL, with the help of URL, you will be able to access the application. So in the web technology, you are having a browser, which is a UI. Then you may be having a database, which is a backend for your application. And in the middle, you are having a web server, or we also call middleware. We also call this one application server. And we also have something called server-side components or business components. All these are part of your web server or application server, right? So what happens now when browser is sending a request, the request will be submitted to your web server. And in turn, web server is going to forward a request to your business components. Usually the business components will be your Java components or your PHP or .NET components, which are nothing but programs. And those programs has the implementation, the actual business knowledge, what a developer implemented. They are going to connect with the database, make a connection to the database, and execute the SQL on the fly based on what request they have to process. So that's how they're going to communicate with the database, get the data, or push the data to database. And once you get the data here, if it has to send a response, the response should be converted into HTML because the browser only understands one thing, HTML. So whatever you want to display in the browser, the response has to be coming as HTML from the server. So that's how any web application works. So, and between your browser and your web server, there is a protocol, that is HTTP protocol. So using HTTP protocol, your browser and server will be communicating. And the web server, like your business components, and the database will be communicating based on what database you are using and what technology you are using here. If you're using a Java technology for business components, and the Java will be using a JDBC, Java Database Connectivity Protocol, for communicating between database and your server, and so on. So it is not like, no, we don't want to really get into too much of depth there, but very high level, this is also called Model View Controller Architecture, Model View Controller, which is MVC. It's a very, very successful architecture in the web application development, Model View Controller. So why this name, this architecture, what it means here? Anything you're developing in the database and the business component, they fall under model. And the UI, what you're developing, that falls under view. And there will be one server-side component which is going to control the navigation between across the different pages. So when I click on a button, it has to go to page 1. When I click on a button 2, it has to go to page 2. So that navigation will be taken care by your controller, etc. So that's why when you're developing a enterprise web application, etc., all your source code, all your resources, what you're developing will be organized into these 3 layers. One is your backend business components. Then it could be like your UI, or it could be your controller. And there are different technologies available, like if you want to go the basic technologies again, you're having HTML, JavaScript, and then here you're having Java, J2E, or .NET, all that, right? So there are some technologies available which are going to help us to develop the applications well. So again, here, typically what is happening when the browser I type a URL, right? How do you access the application? Using URL. So that is what is that URL now? So the URL will be is actually making your communication independent of the technologies here. When I type a URL, it is going to use the HTTP protocol, and the request will be submitted to the browser to your server automatically. So with respect of knowing what is the technology you are using for the browser and what is the technology we are using in the web server. The web server also an application which is developed using some technology, right? We don't care about that. We don't really worry about what are technologies we are using for the server side and the client side. But these two applications, your browser and server, are able to communicate because they are using some a neutral protocol, that is HTTP protocol, right? And the server is exposing your functionality as a URL. The moment it becomes URL, it becomes your technology independent and the platform independent, right? So that's how the HTTP communication works. So what industry these people have done? They have leveraging this concept of URL for developing the web services. So when you are saying web service, what is a web service? The web service is nothing but I'm developing some functionality on somewhere here. Ultimately, what you're developing, you're not doing anything new in terms of web services also. Whatever you have been doing in the PLSQL or Java development, what you are doing, you're having some application requirement, there's some business requirement, and you have to go and develop that logic. You have to go and develop some program using Java or PLSQL, etc. Even the web service also, ultimately the requirement is same. There is some business requirement. It has to do some business logic. It has to call some existing APIs. It has to communicate with some database, or it has to go and communicate with the file system to generate the files or read the files, something like that. The requirement will be more or less same today and earlier also, whether it's web service or some other technology. So here, only difference is what we are doing. We're having the functionality here, but we are also exposing that functionality as a URL. The moment it becomes URL, it becomes the platform and technology independent. Why we need that one? So this is going to allow us to integrate between different applications. So what is happening? If you take an enterprise, in the enterprise you're having n number of applications. You can have a Oracle e-business suite running. You may be having a Fusion applications running on the cloud. You may be having a SAP also running on your enterprise. You may also have some custom applications which are implemented using some other technologies. So at the end of the day, all these applications have to communicate among them to achieve some business requirement, correct? If everything is in the same technology, let's say everything is a database technology, then your integration is not a big deal. I have a Oracle database 1, Oracle database 2, Oracle database 3. Everything in the Oracle database. I can even create a database links among these different servers. And I'll be able to access something from application 1 to application 2 very easily. But that is not the reality. When you're taking the enterprise, your set of applications may be coming from different technologies. There the challenge will be it is going to be challenge to communicate among these applications. So if I'm having a application which is developed like this, what happens here? We're having lots of logic which is implemented in the business components. So when you're developing a middleware based applications or the web applications, the logic is no more just with the database. The logic might be lying in the middleware, somewhere in the server. Now, if you want to expose this particular functionality to somewhere else, some other application, how will you do that one? I cannot get database link to web server. Even if I want to do, I cannot do that one. And this is running Java application, Java business components. I'm having SAP. SAP may not be using Java. Salesforce may not be using Java. We don't know. Right? Fusion applications, we don't know what is the technology used. But you want to communicate among these applications. That is nothing but integration. Correct? So how is that possible? For that one, that is possible with the help of web service. The web service is going to be a building block for any kind of integrations. Why web services? How web service is helping us? Because the web service is nothing but you are creating a wrapper among this functionality. You are leveraging the concept of your web technology. The web technology already having a solution for this. If you look at the web technology, the web application is actually indirectly you can see the browser and your server is able to communicate without knowing what technology they are using. That means there is a solution for communicating between different technologies. And that is possible because your server is exposing the functionality as a URL. The same concept we are applying for developing a web service. It means when you are saying I'm providing a web service, nothing but I'm developing some functionality using any technology. It could be your Java or C++ or something, but I'm going to expose that functionality using one URL. The moment it becomes URL, as I said, it becomes independent of your technology, platform, language, and also the location. As long as both the servers are able to communicate or they're able to reach out, then they both will be able to communicate with the help of URL. So the web service is also nothing but, if you go and see the basics of web service, that is nothing but it's exposed as a URL, so that you're automatically getting the advantage of becoming independent of technology, platform, language, and location. So that is a web service. How to create web service? What is SOAP web service? What is REST web service? We may be talking a little bit today, but when you are actually going to learn the integration cloud, what we are doing, we're actually going to start with understanding about these technologies in detail. What is XML? What is XSD? What is WSDL? How to develop a web service using integration cloud? How to expose integration as a SOAP service, or how to expose your integration as a REST service? How to invoke an existing REST service or SOAP service? That is actually the building blocks of integrations. So you'll be getting much better idea when we go and of course do those integrations. But for now, just make this point that the web service is nothing but you are basically exposing the functionality as a URL, and the client will be able to access your functionality by invoking the URL what you exposed. Okay, and that is going to get the benefit of making that functionality independent of any technology. Now, so here this is a building block for any integrations. And the web services, you may be having SOAP web service and REST web service. Right, any quick questions on this one, what I explained? This concept should be very clear. Okay, so if you don't have questions, I'll just continue. Let's quickly understand between SOAP and REST. In a layman term, we're not talking too much technical today. So the layman term, if you want to understand SOAP and REST, SOAP is your payload. What is payload? The actual data what you want to exchange between two different applications. When you say two different applications, usually you are going to have a client. One of the applications is going to act as a client, and the other application is going to act as a server. So if the client wants to call some functionality on this server, same thing like you're having a PLSQL API, you're having a PLSQL function, think that way, or Java method. Now somebody is going to call that Java method, or somebody is going to call that PLSQL function or procedure what you're writing. Whoever is calling, they are acting as a client, and whoever is actually providing the implementation for that API, acting as a server. The same concept is applicable in case of web service also. The web service provider is going to act as a server, and whoever is going to call that functionality, they're acting as a client. Now, the client and server, they have to exchange some data, right? That is nothing but integration indirectly. Now, that data has to be always in XML. In case of SOAP-based web services, there is no other option. I have to send the XML data as a request, what I'm sending. The response also will be coming as a XML in case of SOAP-based web services. Whereas, in case of REST web services, payload can be any structure. Payload can be using any representation. Use any representation. What is that? It could be XML. It could be JSON. It could be simple text. It could be CSV. As long as the client and server, they have an agreement saying, this is the structure I'm going to send you, and this is how you're going to handle or interpret my data. The server and client have an agreement, and based on that, they're going to exchange the data. But as a technology, it is not going to put any restriction saying it has to be XML, whereas in SOAP it is mandatory. And why REST is becoming more popular nowadays? Because when you are using the mobile applications, in the mobile applications, what happens is, if you're representing the data using XML, usually it becomes heavy because in XML you are going to use some elements and tags, etc. If I'm actually, my actual payload may be 1 KB, but if I'm trying to represent using XML, it may become 3 KB, like that. If it is like a 10 KB, it may become 30 KB. It depends like what elements you are using, etc. in that. So in case of SOAP, you don't have any option. You have to make it 30 KB instead of 10 KB because that is a mandatory there. But in the mobile applications, usually your mobile application will be acting as a client. There's only some functionality somewhere, and you want to call that in the using mobile application. So every time you're making a call, you're actually adding too much of overhead to your communication and your resources. You may not be having enough RAM, etc. So that's where actually people thought about instead of SOAP, can we have an alternate? And they have come up with the REST services. There are many more of course differences. I'm not talking about that one. This is a primary difference between SOAP and REST in terms of the overhead and basically these are lightweight services, RESTful services, right? So with this is just to understand about what is a web service, what is web technology, and why they are important, because they are the building blocks for our integrations, right? Now you can ask any questions if you have. With this, what I will do actually, I'll go and talk about, I'll actually show some integration using Integration Cloud.
Hi, Bhaskar, Deep here.
Yeah, actually I can't hear you properly. Deep.
Now it's fine. Can you hear me now?
Wait, just try it. Yeah.
Let me just type the question.
Fine.
Bhaskar, Satvik here. So payload means any data we are communicating between client and server. That's what you are saying, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. So that payload has to be XML in case of SOAP. In fact, not only XML, there is something called you have to use the SOAP envelope structure. It is adding more overhead there. Okay. And even the protocol, it is not be HTTP, so it's having some standards. Okay, so in case of REST, it is making less restrictions and easy to use in case of REST, because the REST uses directly your HTTP protocol. There is no additional thing required. It always uses HTTP protocol for the communication in case of REST. Okay, Deep, I can't see any message from you, and fine. So what I will do, let me continue. With this, what we'll do is, of course, you can ask the questions again. Let me show one integration now. What we are trying, you will get an idea. Let me show one integration, then I'll talk about why we are doing these integrations, what is the purpose of these integrations. We'll talk a little bit more on that one. So with this, I will open my Chrome and let me log into my Integration Cloud. Okay. So the Integration Cloud, we are getting in fact many enhancements from every month. Yesterday only there was a new update happened. I see in fact a different home screen here. So I log into my home page, and from here I can navigate to integrations. I log in, I go to integrations from here. So in the integrations, what we are doing, don't forget about this specific thing. We are using web services for the communication in the integrations. That is acting as a building block for the integrations. Okay. So what into the Integration Cloud? Integration Cloud is a PaaS. Your OIC or Oracle Integration Cloud is a PaaS model, platform as a service. What are other offerings available from cloud? Usually you're having SaaS. You're also having IaaS, correct? Again, it's a layman term. If you want to understand what is PaaS, SaaS, and IaaS, any service which you can directly give it to your end users, like you're having an employee, and the employee would like to see their salary. They would like to get your salary slip. They would like to go and apply leave request. The end user, if a service, if you can give it to end users, and that service you can treat as a SaaS model. That means you are getting the complete application. So you're getting a service from cloud where You are giving that for technical people. Why? The technical people will go and build some applications. They may be adding some integrations. They're doing something on that. That is usually PaaS. Platform as a service, like a database is a platform. Your integration cloud is a platform. Your Java cloud service is a platform. Because using Java cloud service, you cannot give it to your employee to use it, right? Employee means I'm talking the end user. You cannot give it to some finance guy and say like, no, this is your Java service, you use it. No. What will you give to your finance guy? You're going to give the Fusion Finance, like some user interface where they can go and create their journal ledgers or whatever. So Fusion applications are SaaS model because they are the business applications. Database is not a SaaS. Database is a PaaS model. Integration is not a SaaS. That is a PaaS model. And what is infrastructure? Infrastructure is even lower level. It means I don't even have a database, nothing there. I'm just having a host with some operating system. In that case, it becomes infrastructure only. What I will be doing on top of that, I'll take the my database or my web server. I'll go and install on top of that one. Then I will develop the applications using some other technology, etc. So I can talk about this one again in detail in the next session. I don't want to get into too much of that one, but very high level. Again, to understand that PaaS is nothing but the technology. SaaS is the business application. IaaS means even low level technology, which is your server, just like your host with some operating system. So the integration cloud is a PaaS model. In the integration cloud, what I can do, I can develop the integrations means if I'm having two different applications, either I'm having a Fusion applications and one side I'm having e-business suite. They may be running on different places. E-business suite may be running as a on-premises. Your Fusion may be running on the cloud. Or Fusion and Salesforce, both are running on the cloud. So it could be, the integration could be your cloud. I can put like this, Oracle Cloud to Oracle Cloud. What does it mean? Fusion applications are on Oracle Cloud. And Oracle may be having, suppose right now, there is one more Sales Cloud, something like that. Both are running on the Oracle Cloud. You want to develop some integration. Or Oracle Cloud to non-Oracle Cloud. What is non-Oracle Cloud? For example, Salesforce and Fusion applications. Or Workday and Fusion HCM. You want to develop some integrations. That falls under Oracle Cloud and non-Oracle Cloud. Oracle Cloud and on-premises. What is on-premises? It means your local enterprise, local network. In the enterprise, we are having some database, we are having some application. You want to exchange some data between a local application and your Oracle Cloud application. That also is possible. Or it could be on-premises and on-premise also. Both this is also possible. So they are having two different applications which are running in the enterprise locally. And you want to exchange the data between those two applications. You can develop that integration using integration cloud. Sorry. So what we do for developing integrations? For developing integrations, we are going to create, first thing is the connections. First thing we are going to create the connections. After creating connections, we are going to develop the integration by using those connections in the integrations. And in addition to using the connections, we are also going to develop some business logic in the integration. What business logic? You can transform the data. Let's say I'm getting some employee structure in specific format. Specific format means they're having 5 fields in employee, what I'm getting. But my client is expecting only 2 fields or 3 fields. Or they want to also do some manipulation of the data before it goes to the client. You can do that transformation using integrations. Or you want to have some logic. If the employee expense is less than this much, I want to give some bonus like this. If it's greater than this much, I want to give bonus like this. You can also build some business logic. Or you want to develop more complex business logic. You're having a list of elements. You want to traverse through each element and do some business logic. So you can think of any programming language, usually what you can do. In the programming language, you can write any complex logic. How you are going to write the complex logic? With the help of few things you have to know, like variables and some control statements like if statement and for loop, etc. And you will be having some your arithmetic operations, those kind of things. And then you need to know how to handle your list, your data structures. So with the help of this one, you can write a program. In fact, all those things are possible using integration cloud also. So don't think this is a completely new technology or new thing. It's not completely new thing. You already been working in some kind of programming or some kind of technology. You can relate with integration cloud with any technology what you are working on. You are working with the Java technology, you can relate. If you're working with PLSQL, you can relate. You can work with .NET, you can relate. Everything what you will be doing, the same thing you are going to achieve with a different means, but the requirement will be more or less same. The main difference would be again here, instead of calling your Java methods or PLSQL APIs, we are going to call the web services here. The functionality will be available as a web service, and you will also create a web service if you want to create some functionality. Understand? What is the third party functionality you want to access? That is a web service. What is the functionality you are exposing? That is also a web service in the case of integration cloud. So what I want to develop, I have one web service. What is that web service? Hello World web service. I already have a web service. What does this do? First of all, this is a SOAP-based web service. This is taking some input called name, and I'll be getting an output called hello name. This is what the web service already doing. Now my client is saying, I want to have a service called greetings. I want to access the greeting service as a REST service. I don't want to use SOAP because of some restrictions. My client wants to use only REST service. And for this one, they want to give name as an input, or this name as an input, and output what they're expecting from my service is hello name, greetings from OS. So this is existing service. I did not do anything for that one, right? Service is already there. If somebody wants to use that service, they can use it. And that is exposed as a SOAP web service. So my client is asking for a new service, which has to be available as a REST service. And the functionality is a little different here. If it is only hello name, then what I can do, if my client is also asking only hello name, I can probably just reuse the existing SOAP web service. So when I'm developing this service, what I can do, I take the name, which is coming as input to my service. Internally, I can call this hello world service by passing my name as an input to that one. I'll get the hello name back. Then I can respond this one to my client. I have to still write a wrapper here. Why? Because they're asking a REST service. I cannot simply give this service to them. Even though the functionality is exactly the same what they're looking for, but I don't have a REST service. That's why I need to create a REST service. But I can reuse the existing functionality instead of writing. Don't think like, no, hello name, why do you want to reuse? Think this is a very complex logic you are trying to reuse, right? In that case, what you don't want to rewrite, which is already available, right? You are trying to reuse the existing functionality. On top of that, my client requirement here is they also want to get some additional functionality than what already the service is doing. So to achieve this one in the integration cloud, if you want to do what you want to do, you need to have the web service details for hello world, which is already existing web service, and you are going to create a new web service or the new integration, which will be exposed as a REST service. We are going to do that one now. Any questions on the requirement, what we are going to develop? Because it should be clear what we are trying to do, then it will be easy to understand. Very simple requirement. Okay, so here the way I'm going to do is I will go to connections, and then I'm going to create one connection. When we are creating connections in integration cloud, we are having different adapters available already. These are called adapters. So REST adapter also available. I can create one REST connection like this. Why? Because I want to expose my integration in REST. That's why I need to create one REST connection. Click select. Give some name for that one. So I will give some name like this, BKA REST connection. There is also going to specify whether the role is trigger or invoke. Trigger means you are exposing your integration, your entry point for this one. So I'm creating one connection for based on the REST adapter. Click create. Save it and test. So when you're creating a REST-based connection for trigger, there's nothing to configure. And back. So one connection created, BKA REST connection. I'll create one more connection. This time I'm going to create SOAP-based connection. For what is the purpose of this connection? This connection, I'm creating basically reference for this service. I'm creating a reference for this web service, which is already existing. I created one REST connection to represent this one, whatever I'm exposing. The logic is still yet to be implemented in the integration. Only connection I created now. Let me create this connection now. For this one, I need to have a WSDL. Whenever you want to access the SOAP web service, the service provider is going to give you the WSDL. WSDL will be having enough details about your web service. Do not have the implementation, but the web service details, the specifications will be there in the WSDL. We're going to talk about more in depth about WSDL in the next session. So what I already have a WSDL. First, let me create this. So I'll create BKA hello world. Okay, looks like I already have something same name. I will use connection 1. BKA hello world invoke connection. I'll put invoke. Click create. While creating SOAP-based connection, you have to provide the WSDL. The WSDL can be provided as a URL, or it can be provided. Yeah, they tell me. You have some questions?
Yes, Bhaskar. So you're creating that web service, that SOAP web service, or that
I'm not creating a web
web
service.
service is already there?
Web service is already there. I'm just creating a reference for that web service. It's like you're creating a variable.
Okay, you're just referring that.
Yeah. And where is the WSDL? I already downloaded the WSDL. I'm having that. So that is available in my folder somewhere here. WSDLs. This is a WSDL I already took from a service provider, and I'm saving that in a file here. Hello world.wsdl. I'm taking that here and click upload. So this one is the WSDL definition for my hello world. And I also know that this hello world service does not have any authentication. So I'm setting the security policy as a no security policy. And then click on test, validate and test. So these are the steps for creating any type of connection. We're going to create a connection based on a specific adapter. And based on the adapter, it is going to have some properties you are going to configure like this one. So connection is created. I'm having two connections. One is a REST connection, which is a trigger. One is SOAP connection, which is as an invoke type. Okay, after that what we do? We go and create integration. In the integration, what we do? Yes, so some questions, yeah. Tell me what questions.
If you are accessing it for the first time, how do you get the WSDL? How do you download the WSDL?
Yeah, WSDL usually what happens, your service provider will give you the URL for that one. So using URL, you can download it. Okay. Right. So now,
in this case, it was Oracle has provided the WSDL, right? So how did you get the URL for it?
I mean, before developing the integration, I already spoke to my service provider. They are giving the WSDL. I'm just saving that in a file and keeping it ready. That's all. Okay. Yeah. It could be any service provider. It could be Oracle. It could be myself also. I may be running the service somewhere. Then also I can take the WSDL. Anybody, it doesn't matter. As long as I have access to the host where the service is running, I'll be able to access that service. It's like URL. Any URL I give you, do you need to know where it is running? No need. As long as you are able to access that URL, that host, you will be able to access that URL like that. So I had the two connections created, and then I'm creating one integration. So how to create? Click on create. Okay, there are different types of integrations we can create. We are going to learn about these integrations one by one in the training in detail. But today what I'm going to create is app-driven orchestration. App-driven orchestration is an integration pattern we are going to use. Click select. If you have any questions, I'll come back and take on this one. I'm creating a new integration. I'll name this one as BKA greetings integration. I'll also add this to a package that will be actually helpful to export import later on. We'll talk about that in the training later on. Again, what is package, etc. Okay, it's already there. I'm creating BKA1. Let me do that. Create. So I'm creating an integration called greetings integration, and this is app-driven orchestration. That means what are you have to do here? You can see this is an interface where you can develop the integration. The beauty in Integration Cloud, you don't need to work with any additional tools to develop your integrations and activating the integrations. Everything you can just do in this URL. What is the URL I'm talking about? When you take Oracle Integration Cloud subscription for Oracle, you are going to get one URL like this one. You log into that URL, you can do everything over there. Nothing else you need to know, like any other JDeveloper, Eclipse, nothing like that. Rajesh is asking, does integration web page has its own URL for Fusion Cloud? Fusion Cloud is actually a Fusion applications which is running already. Correct? That is not actually Fusion Cloud will be exposing some web services, and we are going to use them. Integration Cloud is the Integration Cloud. Okay. Right. So now what I do to develop the integration, you are going to start with the trigger connection here. So click on plus here. Then it is going to give all the recently created connections here. You can also search with the connections name. So these are REST connection what I created just now. BK REST connection. I'm using that one. So let me just type this. I created 2 connections. This is the first time. If you never use this interface, you will be getting confused. I created one REST connection, which is a trigger, nothing but entry point. So entry point for my integration or service. Then one more SOAP connection created, which is an invoke type. This is to refer existing hello world SOAP service. That's what I did. Now I'm creating integration. The integration I'm starting with trigger connection. So what are the trigger connection I created? I'm dropping that one here. So based on the trigger connection, what type of connection it is going to have some configuration wizard you have to complete. So what I will complete here now, first I will give some name for this one, saying greetings. Okay, I will say August 25. Some name I'm giving like that. Click next. In the next step, you have to provide, you are developing one operation or some function, you think like that. You have to provide some name for that one. In case of REST-based REST service, you have to provide some URI to represent your operation. So I will represent this one as a greetings August 25, something like that. Okay. And then you also need to mention what type of operation you are developing or what type of service you are developing, whether it's a get operation, post operation, like that. These are the standards in the REST services. So I'm going to create a get operation. They're also having other operations. We are going to talk about these things in detail when we come to that, like understanding more about REST services. Then I'm also going to configure saying this service will be having one query parameter, that is nothing but input parameter, and it will also have a response. Okay, click next. Now here I'm going to create or configure. I'm just basically defining what is the input. The input I will say greetings name or gname I'm giving. That is going to be the input parameter for my service. Data type, I'm selecting string. If you want to understand this one easily, you think like this. You are creating a greetings PLSQL function. Greetings PLSQL function. What will you do? You'll provide some name called greetings, which will be having an argument called name. That's what I'm creating here. It will also have some return value, which is going to be varchar 2, etc. So that's what I'll do in the next step. The next step, what I'm doing, I'm telling my response will be a JSON type. And you also need to provide some sample JSON for that one. The sample JSON you have to create based on a requirement. So what I did here, I'm going to upload my sample JSON. I'm already having these files. All the files what I'm showing here will be shared to you guys in the training. All the WSDLs, JSON, text files, SQL files, CSV files, whatever you need in the practices, everything will be available to you. You'll be able to download these files. So I will be using a JSON file, which is a greetings response. I have created this response, this JSON file in advance because I'll be needing that in this integration. And what is there in that JSON file? I'll open that and see it's a very small attribute called greeting response. The response is a string type, it can have any value. The sample JSON is having hi Bhaskar, but it can contain any value. Who is going to set that value now? My service implementation, when I'm writing the logic, I'm going to set the value for that attribute. Click next. And so you are having greetings August 25, query parameter is gname, and response type is JSON. Done. So this is a trigger point. You can also change this vertical to horizontal and keep saving this. Sometimes it hangs. Okay. Let me make it a little smaller. So here this is a trigger point, your starting point of integration, and this is a response. After that response, you are going to set here. Whichever you are seeing this arrow mark, this is nothing but you're mapping some value. It's like assigning some value to a variable here. And that variable will be a return value variable, which will be returned by this return activity. So what we do now, between these two activities, we are going to build our logic. In Integration Cloud, you are not going to write the code. Everything is going to be drag and drop and declarative approach. So this is the starting point, this is the return mapping, and between that, what I will do, I'm going to call my hello world service, BKA hello world invoke integration. How I'm getting that? It is going to show all the recently created connections there. If it is not there, you have to search it for. You'll get it. Now, I'll give some name for this one. I will say invoke hello world and give some name like that. Click next. The hello world service, which is already available, is providing two operations for me. One is called say hello, one is called visit timestamp details. So my requirement, I already explored this in this web service, and I understood that the say hello operation is what I need to use it to achieve my requirement here, which is going to return me this value like this. Okay, click next, then click next, done. So now you see you're adding more activities in integration. You're getting the input, you're calling one existing service, hello world service. Before calling the service, you have to provide the input for that service. That you can do, this is called mapping activity. The mapping activity, you want to edit that mapping activity. The mapping activity comes automatically when you are creating an invoke. Now, based on what you're invoking, so these are three lanes are there here, which is, this is called source, this is called target, and here this is a mapping canvas. So on the target, what is target in this case? Hello world, say hello operation. The say hello operation is expecting some input. It is expecting some name as an input. So I'm invoking that one. I need to pass the value for that name. Where will be having, I already provide some query parameter to my REST service. So gname is my parameter. I take that value and assign to my, assign to this input for the say hello operation. Validate and close. So one mapping is completed. After that, what we do, keep saving first of all. The return value. This is what you are going to send it to your client. The last activity. Edit. Now in this, the target will be your response, what you're sending to the client. It just takes some time. Yes, second. Yeah, so we are having greeting response. Where is this coming from? If you remember, when I was dropping that REST connection into the integration, I mentioned that my response will be having the JSON, which contains one attribute called greeting response. Right? That was the field I was having there. So I'm trying to form the value for that one. How will I form now? I'm getting the response from my invoke hello world. I take that. This is the say hello return value. And I map that to my greeting response. If I map and leave like this, what will happen? You are going to get return value only this much. But my experiment is I have to make hello name plus greetings from OS. So I need to add some concatenation of something I have to do here. So for that, what I can do, I can actually go to edit mode here in the mapping, and then I can use my concat operation. Whatever the value I'm getting from the say hello return, I want to concatenate with greetings from OS. If you want to see what are the different operations or the functions available, which you can use in this mapping, you can go to your functions here. You have different kind of functions here, string functions, advanced functions, Boolean conversion, etc. In fact, what I used here is a concat function. I can also drop like this. If I know the syntax, I can type like this. Concat operation takes two parameters. One is your parameter 1, comma, parameter 2. This is a hard-coded value I'm putting in the single quotes. Then what you do, just set this and validate your mapping. The mapping has to be proper, otherwise it will be failing. It's okay now. Close this. So now the integration is complete, but still it's showing some red mark here. It means it's not complete. You have to set one more thing called tracking variable. The tracking variable will be useful to track your request after it is processed. So I can have 3 tracking variables. So I'm going to take this one and add here. If you're having any confusion, just don't worry about it. So this particular the demo what I'm showing here, because I'm trying to show the end-to-end implementation of an integration with the help of different connections, different activities, all that. So you will only, it will become very easy after you start practicing and developing your integration on your own. The idea of this developing integration is going to give an end-to-end picture, and so that in the future sessions when you are going to do the additional topics like XML, XSD, WSDL, REST, etc., you'll be able to visualize how they are connected to the integration development. And it's also giving an idea of what are the different steps involved in creating an integration. So there is no, surprise if you're having any confusion, or if you're thinking, how will I know where to click? How will I know this is a mapping I do like this? How will I know what I have to choose on the left and what to choose on the right and all? That is a valid your doubts. No need to worry about that one. You will get familiar with that one when you start developing. And also, we'll be developing this one in detail. You can take more questions. We can talk about each and every point in the future sessions. And this is in fact very, very small integration. The smallest integration what you're going to develop. We're going to create much more advanced and the live integration of the Fusion applications, Oracle, local database, etc. You will see that. Okay, let me save this and close. You might be thinking, you may be thinking sometimes both if you know already, and if you're not familiar, you may be thinking, how will I get familiar, don't worry about it. Now, after creating integration, activate that. The next step is creating and activating the integration. Activate like this. After that, what you can do, you can test it. So active mode is there now. The integrations are showing the status of the integrations. So this is my integration BKA1 greetings integration. I want to test it. Click on test and test. It is asking provide the value for your gname parameter. I'll provide Bhaskar. Then click on test. So what we have to get now, if it is working as expected, it is giving a JSON here which contains a value for greeting response. Hello Bhaskar, greetings from OIC. If I send something else here, it's going to give naturally greetings. Hello Ramesh, greetings from OIC. It's also showing here the trace, what happened in the integration, etc. Okay, but this is what you're getting as a response. You can also test from here. If you don't want test from here, you can also test from some other tools also. If you're using SOAP UI tool or your Postman tool. So all those things you can use it for testing your integration. For that one, okay, I'll take the question just a moment. All that what you can do, you can also take your metadata file of your integration. Basically what you've done now, you've developed an integration. That integration can be invoked by somebody using this URL. We're indirectly developing a web service also. Okay, yeah. I got questions from Deep and I think Farish also in between. Yeah. Deep, tell me.
Yeah, so Bhaskar, like you had given a JSON file, right, where there was a name called Bhaskar. So what was that? What was the use of that?
That is a
Like,
sample.
currently also you like, why did you hard code that name out there?
You need to have some sample value, that's all. It can be any value.
Okay, that was just a sample value, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So this is how you can create an integration, end-to-end steps what I've shown. But this is very simple integration what you have done. But in fact, if you've seen here, the integration usually you are going to invoke some third-party service. The third-party service can be either source-based service or REST service or based on some other adapter also. What do you mean some other adapter? Adapters can be technology adapters or applications adapters. These two are technology adapters, SOAP and REST, what I use today. It means we are using a technology. What are the other examples of technology adapters? If I want to communicate with file system, file adapter. If you want to communicate with FTP, FTP adapter. Database, database adapter. These all are your technology adapters. But if I want to communicate with Fusion applications may be having an adapter called ERP adapter. Oracle ERP adapter. Salesforce may be having an adapter called Salesforce adapter. I want to communicate with Gmail also may be available as an adapter for me. How do you get all the adapters? If you go to Integration Cloud, while creating connection also you have seen the adapter list, you can also go and check the adapters list here also. So all the adapters, you can categorize them as the technology adapters or application adapter. It doesn't matter for the action, basically it's adapter. What do you do with adapters? You're going to create the connections using adapters and use them in the integration. On top of using the integrations and using the connections, you'll also write the business logic. That's how we're going to build the integrations. Now, going back to our integration here, let me deactivate this for a moment so that I can again edit it. If I go here, you all need to learn, first of all, when I was creating integrations, I showed there are different types of integrations like app-based, app-driven orchestration, then schedule orchestration, publisher, subscriber. So you also need to know the purpose of different like those patterns. And in the orchestration-based integrations, you also need to know all these activities. We didn't use any of these activities except map activity we used. What else I used? I don't think I used any other activity. Written activities automatically coming. You are also going to learn each and every activity under orchestration. So if you know all these activities, and if you know how to create different patterns like the orchestration based or scheduled orchestration, etc., and if you can deal with some adapters, then you can say like, no, you are the integration developer. You know how to develop integrations. Now, how many adapters you have to use to learn the integrations? It depends. Bare minimum, you should be able to know how to use REST adapter, how to use SOAP adapter, how to use file FTP database. Then application adapters, there is no limit. It depends based on requirement. Tomorrow, the requirement may be I want to integrate with SAP adapter, SAP application. Then you are going to use SAP adapter. So so we are going to do some integration with Fusion applications, etc. And we're also going to do n number of integrations using like this REST and SOAP and file FTP database, all that. So with that foundation, with that knowledge, what you are going to do, you'll be able to develop any integrations. That's the idea. Okay. Let me take a few questions before I go and show, in fact, a couple of things. What I want to show next is, you have done the gating integration now. I also want to show a couple of more complex integrations to just get an idea what kind of integrations we will be developing also, either in the course or in general. Okay, that will give a little bit better idea. But before I go there, if you have any questions, I can take. Again, today I'm trying to make it like in comprehensive overview of the technology and the training what we're going to do. Hands-on all you'll be getting. I'll be giving enough time for practicing. I'll be giving all the resources what you do for practicing. I'll be explaining what exactly you do for the practices. Okay. Fine. No questions. Right. So what I will do now, the next integration, what I want to show, if anybody wants to note down my number, if you don't have, just you can note down this. And if you want to communicate after the session, you can just ping me on WhatsApp. I'm available. Right. Then I want to create one integration. My requirement is data loading to Fusion applications. The Fusion application is a cloud-based application. We're having financials, human capital management, HCM, supply chain management, and so on. Now, as part of implementation, you may be migrating the data from old applications to the Fusion applications. And as part of that, you may want to load the data, which is like the mass data. You want to load from some source to your Fusion applications. For all these things in the Fusion applications, you're having a set of steps you have to follow. You may be already knowing if you're working the Fusion applications. But what we want to do is, we want to automate those steps. What are the steps? In the Fusion applications, if you want to load the data, there is a approach called FBDI, file-based data import. In the file-based data import, I'm just trying to make it again really fast to understand this. You're going to download a template from Fusion applications, then prepare your data. Okay, I'm getting a question, I think. Okay, I'm sending my number to everyone. Okay, prepare the data, and then what you do, you're preparing the data will be available as a basically CSV or zip. After that, what you do, you're going to upload the file to Fusion apps content server. Then you are going to schedule one import process on Fusion applications by providing the file name as an input parameter and also the process name. Very shortcut way, these are the steps. You can do this everything manually. But what I want to do now, I want to develop an integration. Assuming that you already prepared the data and kept that file on some FTP folder. I'm having an FTP folder here. Let me correct. I have a FTP server which is actually running on the cloud. This one, some other FTP cloud server. On that, I already created one input for FBDI. I have a prepared one file here. I'm trying to import some daily rates into Fusion applications, bulk data. So in this, I'm having some data like a few rows, like how many rows, like 10 or 12 rows are there. Now, usually you may be having, in fact, more number of rows for the bulk data. If it is 10 rows, sometimes you can create manually also, right? But it may be having 100, like thousands also. In that case, you are going to use the file-based data import. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to just give one example, the power of integrations, how you can apply the integration technology for automating certain things in the Fusion applications. And the same thing you can also apply to any other applications also based on what kind of features they are providing. Okay, so I have a CSV file created and available in this folder on FTP. You can see in files FBDA test. Then what I want to do is I want to develop integration, and then that is going to upload the file content, this one to Fusion content server, schedule the process required, process everything, wait for the process completion. Then it's going to download file into my another FTP folder called out files. And I want to download that here. Let me, I think I may be already having some here. Okay, it's not there. So I want to download here. So what I will do for that, let me take my integration name. I already have it. So I'm not going to create the new integration for that. I'm going to take my existing integration, what I developed recently, because if I have to create, you won't be able to first of all follow that. And that is something that we'll be developing in our course later on. So this is my integration, which we developed. And it's already in active mode. Let me submit this. This is the scheduled orchestration. Just now what we created was app-driven orchestration. This is scheduled orchestration. Scheduled orchestration means I can submit like this, submit, or I can also create some schedule intervals. It means every 1 hour I want to run this. Every 1 hour it will go and check like if there's a file available in the FTP, and then it will automatically process your FBDI. In this case, what I'm doing, I'm just submitting once. So everything I think should be okay. Let me see. In fact, many things are involved in this integration. I need to have the Fusion applications running properly. That username password should be proper. FTP username password should be like, no, credentials should be proper. Connection should be working. So let me submit once and see if it is working. It will take some time. We'll come back to that. And one more thing what I want to develop is, this is one integration I want to show. And one more integration, I'm having a local database. In the local database, I have one schema here. I was in this e-business suite local on-premise database. And I have a supplier table here. This is not Fusion applications. My custom application or e-business suite, whatever. I'll come back to FBDI. I've just submitted. It will take like a few seconds. I'll come back to that and I'll show what happened. In the meantime, I'm explaining what is the other integration I'm going to show. Other integration here, I'm having a local table with some supplier data. It contains supplier name, supplier number, tax organization type, supplier type, relationship, whatever. So, and then if I log into Fusion applications here, okay, this is my Fusion applications cloud. I log into that. This is nothing to do with the integration cloud. These two are different things. I log in there using my username password. So here, okay, I go to my home page. And I want to create some suppliers in the Fusion applications. So this is a supplier where you can manage your suppliers in the Fusion apps. If I go and search for the existing suppliers here, this is not the integration cloud, okay? Let's say I want to search for demo suppliers. It's having 3 suppliers which are having ending like your number 282, 283, 288. So I'm also having a supplier table local application database. These three already created there. You can see 282, 283, 288. These three I created already. So what I want to do now, I want to develop an integration which can read the data from this table, the local database table. Based on some condition, I'm having a column called status. What is the status? Let me close this. It's not having the proper updated. Let me open again. Actually, this is the status. I'm maintaining three different values: S, NR, E, and R. NR means not ready to process. It means the entries are available here, but these entries are not ready to be processed for creating in the Fusion applications. So my requirement is whatever the data coming into my local application, e-business or whatever, for these entries, I also want to create the suppliers in my Fusion applications. And for that, I want to develop integration and schedule it so that without any manual intervention, is going to pull the data from this database and create the suppliers in the Fusion applications, right? So for that, I'm using some logic. If it is completed already, it is going to update the status back as a success. It is going to read only the entries where the status is R, means ready for process. While creating the supplier in the Fusion applications, if anything goes wrong, my integration will be updating this table back as a E. If it is successful, it is going to update it as a S. Okay, I'll come back to this. Let me see if my Fusion FBDA process completed. So for that, what I can do, I can go to my this one and just refresh this. See, it is creating one zip file with the log files. FBDA process completed and is downloading the log files, and it is available on my FTP folder. So what I can do with this one now, I can download this one. Okay, I'll put here. Let me remove all this, the existing ones. I will download to my local like this. FBDI. It is available in August 20 evening. Okay, I'll go to my, this is a folder. So this is a zip file. I'll extract this one now. So it's creating, it is having all these files. So what it is having, it is giving all the files. In fact, if you open the txt file, which will be having the final result of this one. So double click. So what it is telling, total out of all these entries, actually 2 entries are failed. You may be having additional information also in other log files, but it's telling basically 2 entries failed. What is the reason? From currency to currency, these 2 entries, USD and DKKP, USD, KRWT. What is the error code? VF10. VF10 means the 2 currencies invalid. So I was having 11 entries or something. In that it's telling everything is processed except the 2 entries which are failed. Let me go back to my file what I used. Actually, that is also available by the way. Whatever I use, the file is also downloaded. You can see this is the file I was using. So it is telling these 2 are not recognized. So while importing the data into Fusion applications, it failed, but all other entries got successful. How can you verify? If you go to daily rates, manage daily rates UI, you can actually verify. You can go there and check like what is the INR to USD. You will be able to see this value there, whatever I uploaded. I can show that also. Okay, that is what FBDI. And for this one, if you see what we developed in the integration, let me deactivate this. Because why I need to deactivate? If I don't deactivate, I won't be able to open it properly and edit, etc. So I'm deactivating so that I can show you how the FBDI automation is done. So if you look at this one, we're having so many different activities. The one what we created today is just 1 or 2 operations. So what I'm doing here, I'm using a FTP adapter to download the CSV file. I'm using a ERP integration service from Fusion applications to upload to Fusion content server. I'm using an ERP integration service to schedule the job. I'm using a while loop to check whether my status is completed or not completed for the process. Once it's completed, I'm downloading the log files using again ERP integration service, and then I'm writing those log files into FTP. Very logical, but how to do this and done? That's what you're going to learn, right? Okay, on those lines, let me close this. Let me also show that supplier thing, what I am telling. Supplier thing is not FBDI. File-based data import is used for the data loading, mass data. In case of supplier integration, what I am trying to do, I have a few rows maybe here. Every row I want to create using in the Fusion application with the help of Fusion service. There will be some Fusion web service you need to have for that one, or the adapter. So what I will do now, let me just go ahead and make some of these entries into ready state. That means I want to process these rows like this. 3 rows. One is 84, 85, and 86. Just commit this change. This is my local database. Now what I will do, I'll go to my integration name. Let me take it. Actually, I noted down that here. Integration, what I developed was this one, create supplier from database. So I open that. Sorry, this is active mode already. So I think I can just submit. So this should not take actually much time, because FBD is having more things. You have to upload and schedule a job and wait for the completion, all that. But this is like to synchronous. You are just taking the value and creating directly in case of create supplier. So the supplier names will be starting with demo only, right? All those, I think, yeah, correct. It will also take a few seconds. So let me just check in the link if it is completed. So there were 2 entries earlier. If I search, so you can see 6 entries are there now. 85, 86, 88 completed. This is the Fusion applications. What we did, we did the integrations in the integration cloud to use different adapters reading the data. In this case, what I am doing a little bit different here. In the previous case, I was using FTP adapter to download the data, then ERP integration service, which is like FBDI automation, all that. In this case, what we're doing, we're not using FTP. Why? Because I'm downloading the data, taking the data from the database. I'm using a database adapter to read the data from database. Then what I do, I'm getting multiple rows from the database. Now, if I'm having like getting 3 records, but my Fusion supplier service will take only 1 record at a time. So this is my Fusion supplier service, create supplier. So this one is expecting only 1 record. So what I'm doing, I'm using a for loop for that one. Using for loop, I'm processing each record, calling the Fusion supplier service, create supplier. After supplier is completed, I'm updating the status back into my database. So in fact, if you see database now, you just close this and you can again open that. You should be able to see those 3 fields will be updated as a yes. You can see that. I kept it R. So that is happening with this activity. I'm updating the status back to my local database. I'm doing both the side integration, both the side invocation now. Reading the data from database, creating the suppliers in Fusion, then updating back into my database. I'm also handling a fault here. The fault handler is going to help me to update the status as a E or error into my database. If anything failing, I didn't have any case when I executed today, but it is taking care of your faults also. So this is and all, we are going to learn how to do this and all, like in the future sessions in the course. Okay, let me close this. Right. Any questions on this? So next what I want to talk is, I think I'll take another 10 minutes probably. I want to just explain quickly about the course content, what we're doing, how we are learning, why we designed that way, etc. Before that, any questions? Okay, so for the course content, if you go to scroll down, I have designed the course into 4 parts. Part 1, part 2, part 3 and part 4. Why these parts? Part 1. First, we are learning the integration technology here. When you are learning integration technology, what you are learning? You are learning the basics of your XML, XSD, JSON, REST, SOAP, etc. Understanding about adapters, connections, creating different kind of integrations, app-driven, schedule, orchestration, all that. The most important thing in this case, if you look at when we are creating a project work, in fact, with different scenarios, we are building something today. Tomorrow we are going to add more functionality to that one by using one more scenario. Let's say I'm creating one order processing by taking one file or one record as an input. Then what I will do in the project, I will extend that one to process multiple records which are coming from a CSV file. And tomorrow we are going to add that one to download a zip file from FTP, extract all the CSV files and process them, something like that. So we're creating, with the help of some scenarios, we are learning the integration cloud technology without directly involving any fusion applications, etc. here. It is like you're developing a PLSQL as a technology. Then you're using PLSQL for developing something tomorrow for specific application. So part 1 is all about learning your technology, understanding from the basics and foundation, everything, to integrating different integrations with different adapters, etc. The part 2 of the course, we are going to learn the fusion technical aspects, which is completely disconnected from the integration cloud. Here you are going to learn about your BIP reporting, OTBI reporting, what is file-based data import, what is scheduling services, what is file import, export, or content server, all that concepts you are going to learn. Why do you need to learn this one? Because of 2 reasons. First reason, most of the guys you are learning this course because you want to work in the fusion technical, not only the integration, but you should also have awareness of this one. But we are not going too much depth in this part. This part, for example, you are doing in depth. This is little bit up to some extent what we need within the scope of this training, in the integration, because our focus is integrations. We learn that part. Not only that one, second reason why we are learning this one, in the part 3, we are going to have the fusion live integrations. How will you do this one? With the help of web services available in the fusion applications. What kind of web services? SOAP, REST, and also ERP cloud adapter. 3 ways you can use. How will you call these adapters and services, etc.? You have to do some integrations for that one. Whatever you learned here, with the help of that knowledge, we are going to develop the integrations here. What you are trying to automate here, what scenarios you are going to create. I have created one BIP report here, which is going to have some output when I run the report. Here what I want to do, I want to create one integration to download and run the report and download the output of the report and manipulate it with the help of integration programmatically, or something like what I have shown today otherwise. I know how to do FBDA here. I want to automate that here. I want to create some records in the fusion application with the help of SOAP services. I want to download some data using REST adapters, REST services like that. So the part 3 is all about, part 1 is integration cloud, part 2 is the fusion technical, OBI, BIP, OTBI, FBDA, etc. Part 3, different scenarios you are developing the fusion application integrations. Right? Then the part 4, this is not really mandatory. You can even stop here, right? This is actually complete. You know the integration, you know the fusion technical, you know the live integrations. This is additional thing. We're also trying to understand what is Oracle Visual Builder Cloud, VBCS, what is PCS, what is ADF. Why we need to know this one? Just to again have some awareness of these technologies. If you want to use them in future, you want to learn, you at least know what is the purpose of that, what is the scope of those technologies, etc. The application of that one. But are we going to learn in depth of these technologies? Not really. This is not sufficient if you want to become VBCS expert. The training, what we are going to, the topic here, what we are going to cover, will not be sufficient to become expert of these technologies. But you will get the foundation, you will get the understanding of the technology, you will see 1 or 2 examples. You will be able to do the practice also. But not like what we did here. This is a more focus. Like that, Oracle SOA you'll be learning little bit more because Oracle SOA concepts and the concept of integration cloud are more or less same. In fact, Oracle SOA is very mature technology in integrations. Now what Oracle did, they have rewritten the SOA concepts on the cloud and they're exposing that as a cloud service, which is integration cloud service, right? So as I said here, we are going to learn those technologies also up to some foundation, some examples, some like awareness, etc. That's how the course is organized here. Very, logical way to learn from very basics without knowing, without having any background of any technologies like web services. You learn the integration technology, then you use them in the from some integrations, advanced integrations. Also getting some awareness of other technologies. In fact, when you go to VBCS, even though I said like no, we are not going in depth, we are going to do in fact very good use cases. What I will do in the VBCS, what are the integrations I developed here? Also the adapters or the services what we're having, the fusion applications, we'll be able to call those integrations and the services from the VBCS UI to manipulate the data, to present the data in the UI application. I'll be showing one example like that. Okay. In SOA again, I will show the same thing what you did the integration cloud. If I have to develop that in SOA, how will you do that one? What is the difference? What is the pros and cons? How will you decide which technology to use so that you'll be confident of participating in your architecture discussions, take the decisions, etc. based on that knowledge. That's the idea of those last four, the technologies what we're learning. In fact, some people ask me to show the Oracle Apex also. Many times I also cover the Oracle Apex in the last session, to learn this, you are going to get access to all the whatever I have shown in my integration when I was doing. All these resources, you are going to get all the files, one activity guide, which will be helping in certain activities. The files will be having WSDL, JSON, all that stuff. We'll be getting FTP. The server access will be like we are going to get OIC instance for 3 months. We'll be getting Fusion Cloud for 6 months. And we'll also get FTP server for 6 months. Okay, so with this, we'll be able to work on the practices. Every session, we'll be having a scenario, a concept, a different components we're going to learn. I'll be demonstrating everything properly. We'll be going a little bit slower than probably what we did today. We'll be taking more questions. We'll be making more interactive usually. And also I'll be asking you to work on additional practices. Whatever the demo I'm going to show, anyway you are going to work on that. That is for mandatory. On top of that, I'll be giving, if I show 2 scenarios, I'll ask you to work on 4 scenarios sometimes. You have to spend more time and explore and work on it. And when you come back to the next session, if you're having any questions, you're stuck on something, I'll be able to open an integration and fix that, or discuss about like what went wrong, why we are doing that, right? That's how we are going to learn this. So only thing what I need from your side, if you're attending this course, only expectation is you are going to spend enough time for the practices. Without that, you will not be able to learn this technology. You will understand, you will enjoy, attending the course maybe looks good, you will get some idea. But if you want to become hands-on and confident of the technology for the next 6 weeks or whatever the duration we are going to have, you need to spend enough time for the practices. That's one of the reasons why we are generally having alternate sessions. So if I take the session today, the next session is planned for the Thursday. So tomorrow you are having enough time to, tomorrow and day after tomorrow, you can work on the practices. That is the idea, right? So that is the commitment I need from you guys if you want to become expert in this technology. I can guarantee if you follow what I'm telling, if you attend the course, the class, and work on the practices, come up with the questions, then nobody can stop you. You will become expert of the technology. So I have some questions. Yes. Coming to the question on the certification, yes, the course, after this course, you can work on certification called 1042-20. This is the certification you can complete after this course. There are some topics which are not covered in this training, but with the help of whatever you're doing here, most of the things will be able to, you will be able to attempt, and I will be able to share one dumps available with me, which is actually for 1042. But what I heard from the people who took this certification recently, that this is also very helpful. What are the dumps I'm sharing? So that will be, and many people actually clearing the certification even before the course is completed. I've seen that, and they always come back saying the course is very useful for clearing the certification. Right? Okay. Any other questions? I think I have covered everything what I wanted to, but if you have any questions, I can take now. Okay, the sessions we are going to have Tuesday, Thursday, 9:30 p.m. to 11 p.m. and Saturday we are going to have 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. This is 2 hour session. This is 1.5 hour session. All IST timings. All right. So next session will be day after tomorrow, 9:30. That's all from my side. If you still have any questions, I'm available. You can also reach out me on WhatsApp or call me on 9071449288. Okay. Right. Can we wind up the session or you have any questions? I can just end the session if you don't have any questions. All right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's about the MVC structure, what you have explained. What technologies comes under that controller part?
Usually it will be part of your technology. For example, if you're using Java technologies, what happens? Servlet will be acting as a controller.
Okay, that's
Okay. If you're using ADF, ADF task flows will be acting as a controller, like that.
okay, like that.
Your UI flow will be actually controlled by that module.
Okay, fine. Yeah.
In case of struts is having actually one configuration file called struts config file, which contains the flow.
Okay, so controller can be the technology specific.
Yeah, it is a technology specific.
Yeah. Okay, fine.
All right. Any other questions? Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for listening to me with patience. See you next day after tomorrow. All right.